Is Joel Cope, and I'm the president of the Mableton Improvement Coalition. And on behalf of Mick, we'd like to welcome you to our discussion this evening concerning the redistricting process that we, as residents of Cobb County, as well as the entire state of Georgia, are about to embark upon through our elected representatives. We think you will find this to be both an interesting and informative conversation. I'd like to particularly thank all the panelists who have agreed to participate in this evening's forum. Each of them is an elected official in this area of Cobb County, whether in the State House of Representatives or the State Senate. Each of them is giving generously of his or her time in order to share information and insight on this process with you. Now, they are in no particular order: State Senator Dr. Michael Rhett, State Representative David Wilkerson, and State Representative Erica Thomas, who will be joining us shortly, and State Representative Erick Allen. In addition, I'd like to thank each one of you in the listening audience for caring enough to be part of this discussion this evening. If you are listening to us, you're doing so either through having registered for the Zoom link, or you may be watching us through a live Facebook video stream. And as you know, when you registered, you had the chance to submit a question for one, some, or all of our panelists. As a result of that process, we received many questions from you, the public. And we did not want any of our viewing audience members to not hear your questions and leave this forum upset because you just don't hear that question being posed. Due to the limited amount of time and the number of panelists we have here this evening, we may not be able to reach all the questions that you submitted to us. But we simply want to give you that information out there in advance. Now, some of you may be wondering about MIC. Well, the Mableton Improvement Coalition, or MIC, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with 11 board members. We've existed since 2001. Today, we're involved in a whole host of subject areas, including, but not limited to, zoning, community garden, parks, Mableton Farmers Market, neighborhood watches, economic development, Adopt a Mile, and many, many other areas of interest in our community, including forums just like this one. Now, I cannot stress enough that MIC accomplishes all that it does without the benefit of any paid staff or headquarters, and depends entirely upon the work of all of its volunteers. Now, we're very fortunate we have on this evening our chair, Ray Thomas, and he'd like to say a few words as well to you, the members of the audience. Ray?
Well, good evening, Joel. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I just want to say welcome to our audience tonight. Welcome to our panelists who are taking time out of their busy schedule to be with us this evening to talk about a subject that is very, very important to our community. In addition to that, I'd like to give a shout out to our membership, because as Joel mentioned, you know, we are a volunteer organization, and we're putting a lot of time and sometimes personal resource into this. However, our membership, our members and our sponsors, you folks that are out in the audience, are the ones who help us bring this value proposition to us, forums like this. So I want to thank you, members. I want to thank you, sponsors. And finally, I'd like to thank our board members, the ones who day in and day out work extremely hard to help improve and make Mableton a better place to live. So I just want to thank you all again, and hope this forum will be very informative and informational for you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ray. Appreciate that. In addition, we're very fortunate to have with us this evening our Vice President, who is Nate Smith, and he is sort of our education guru, and he's here to say a word for you about an area of interest in the upcoming election that we have. Nate?
Well, thank you, Joel, and good evening, everyone. As Joel has said, my name is Nate Smith, and I serve as the chair of MIC's Education Committee. And I would just like to take a few moments to remind everyone that if you have not done so already, to please get out and vote on the East Blast next Tuesday, November 3rd. This is not a new tax, but a continuation of the current 6% tax. As residents of Mableton and South Cobb, it's extremely important that you express your opinion on East Blast. To be clear, MIC is an organization, does not take a stance with respect to the passage of East Bluffs. However, casting your vote is the most effective way to ensure that your concerns are taken into consideration regarding our schools, which again affects the quality of life for all of us. Thank you very much. And again, back to you, Joel.
All right. Thank you so much, Nate. Appreciate that.
Joel, may I interject for just a moment?
Certainly.
Nate, I think you mentioned the next Tuesday, November the 3rd, but it's November the 2nd. The vote will take place. And I just wanted to get that out there for the audience purposes. So you have until November 2nd to cast your vote, and early voting ends, I think, tomorrow as well. So
that's correct.
Anyway, thank you very much, Nate. Appreciate that.
Bye.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much for that, and thank you, Ray. All right, so at this point, we're going to turn to our assembled and distinguished panelists. As I mentioned earlier, we are fortunate we have our elected representatives with us in this evening's forum. And what I'd like to do is basically have each one of them to introduce themselves, say what their post is and what geographic area that particular post addresses. And so Representative Allen, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Joel. And thank you, Mick, for having the forum and having us here tonight. I am Erick Allen. I represent the 40th district, which straddles Fulton and Cobb County. So I've got a little bit of North Atlanta, a lot of Vinings, almost all of Vinings, a little bit of Smyrna, and 2 precincts over in Mableton. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. State Senator Dr. Rhett.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. I'm Senator Rhett, otherwise known as Doc. My district is District 33, which is most of Marietta, Powder Springs, and a little bit of Mableton and Austell. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Certainly. Thank you. And Representative Wilkerson.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Mick for hosting the forum. You guys do some great forums on a variety of subjects, so I appreciate being here. My name is David Wilkerson. I serve the 38th district, which is part of the western part of the county, from Powder Springs, a little bit of Austell, part of Mableton, and part of Smyrna. So anywhere from the McEachern High School area down to the South Cobb area, and some Osborne families as well. But my kids graduated from McEachern High School, attended Floyd Middle and Russell Elementary, so very familiar with the area, and I look forward to the nice discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. So as all of you know, the topic for this evening is the redistricting process. And so before we kind of get into the substance of the conversation, it might help the audience to understand what is the meaning of the word redistricting as it's occurring or about to occur in the state of Georgia. And that's a question that any of the panelists can answer, or you all three can weigh in on that conversation.
Well, I guess I can start. Let me get my dollar store glasses out here. Well, let's start with apportionment. Basically, that's the process of determining the number of representatives to which each state is entitled in the U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Congress. And it's pretty much based on the census population, which is taken every 10 years. Now, basically what happens from there is, and that's pretty much the definition of apportionment. Congress is the one that decides the number of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congress has usually set the number of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives at 435 people since 1911, except for a temporary increase to 437 at the time of omitting Alaska and Hawaii. Based on the census population data figures, U.S. congressional districts are apportioned to the states. Georgia has a population of over 10 million people, and this is a gain of 1 million over the last 10 years. But based on the population, Georgia has 14 House of Representative members, and Georgia did not gain or lose. Now, a quick definition for redistricting. Redistricting, for the most part, is the process of revising the geographical boundaries of areas to which people elect representatives in the U.S. Congress, state legislature, county, city council, or school board. In the state of Georgia, the state legislature, meaning the House and Senate, are the ones who review and approve the redistricting maps. So that's apportionment and also redistricting definition in a nutshell.
Okay. Representative Allen or Representative Wilkerson, would you like to add anything to what the senator has stated?
Yeah, I think Doc summed it up really well. I'll just add that it's also an opportunity to readjust our lines for not only Congress, State House, State Senate, but also school board and county commission as far as the legislative delegation is concerned. And also based on that data, forward, you'll start to see some of the municipalities readjust their city lines for council seats. So it has an impact all the way down through government, not just at the federal, state, but also at the local level.
Okay. All right. So is it fair to say that the difference between reapportionment and redistricting is that reapportionment is on the federal level and redistricting is a state level process? Is that a fair distinction, or would you make a different distinction?
Now, reapportionment is on the number of seats you get. So as Doc said, how many congressional districts will Georgia have? We're going to stay at 14. Redistricting is the actual drawing of the lines.
Okay.
Right. Congress does the reapportionment, the state legislature does the redistricting.
Okay. And is this a process that is Georgia unique in going through this process in 2021, or is this a process through which all 50 states are participating?
All 50.
Okay. And
all 50. Some states, just like I stated in Georgia, the legislature kind of has the final approval, where I believe there's a few states that has an independent panel. I can't quote which states they are, but just to add a little flavor to that, a little background.
And Representative Wilkerson, why is redistricting even done in the first place? What purpose does that serve?
Basically, you have to have one person, one vote. So it smooths out the line. So as population changes, for example, in Georgia, and I apologize, I'm in a hotel and there's a dog barking, but South Georgia has lost population, so they're going to reduce the number of seats they have. And oh my goodness, basically it's one person, one vote. I mean, you can't have several years ago, back in the 60s, I think they had unit county voting, and that was ruled unconstitutional because every person should have a right to elect their elected official and have the same strength as anybody else. So on a federal level, your congressional seats will usually have a deviation of what they call one. So one person, one way or the other. State House seats, the courts have typically ruled that you can go 5% above or 5% below. But basically it's to smooth out the population changes over the last 10 years.
And why is this process occurring every 10 years? Why not 5? Why not 2? Why not 4?
It can happen as many times as you want. It has to happen every 10 years. However, what we found over the last decade was the party in power decided to go back and adjust over those 10 years. So for example, in Representative Allen's district, before he got there, they tried to change the district, and because of calls from the voters and people in the community, they actually backed off on that. But there's nothing to stop the legislative body from changing the lines every year if they wanted to, but you have to do it every 10 years.
And where does this authority come from that mandates it be done every 10 years at a minimum? Where's that authority coming from?
Constitution.
United States Constitution.
Okay. And if this is to be done more frequently than 10 years, what is the justification for doing so in those circumstances?
Because they can.
All right.
I mean, that's bottom line, is because they can. So
there doesn't have to be justification.
Yeah, there is no justification needed. I mean, there is nothing in our Constitution. Some states have things in their Constitution that guide a redistricting process. We do not really. So the legislative body can go back in and draw lines whenever they want to. If they don't do it, is the only time that someone can actually sue and force a court and ask a court to seek relief. But other than that, the legislative body, whoever's in power, can go back and change those lines every year if they wanted to.
And once again, that also applies to county commission lines and others as well, as we saw in Cobb County with some lines being shifted in 2016, I believe 2015 and 2016. So it doesn't have to be every 10 years.
Okay. And is Georgia's process unique in having the legislature to perform the redistricting process, or is that more commonplace?
That is the most common process.
Is there any, what levels of government are affected by the redistricting process in 2021? Is it just state and state house and state rep? Is it the county commission? Is it the board of education for the county? How far up and down the ballot does that process concern itself this year?
Every level, U.S. Congress, state legislature, county, municipal, school board, even dog catcher. I mean, no, scratch that last one. But
yeah, from a practical purpose, because the process is so late this year, we will most likely during the special session, my understanding is we're only going to do the congressional, the state senate, and the state house. The local redistricting for your school board and county commission will be done beginning of next year. And then your municipal elections are not in our control. City of Marietta, Smyrna, Austell, they will do those next year as well. So right now, what you're going to see over the next couple of weeks is drawing maps that will impact who you get to vote for. Beginning of November will be state senate, state house, and U.S. Congress.
And okay, so you just mentioned that term special session. What is a special session, and when is it supposed to occur for redistricting this year?
So a special session is any session outside of the normal 40-day regular session that we have starting the second Monday of January. The governor calls special election through proclamation and has a very narrow scope of what business we can take up. So we can only take up the things that the governor calls for in a special session. This special session, as Whip Wilkerson said, we're only going to be taking up congressional, legislative maps, as well as local legislation, and I believe crime bill or some other appropriation measure that he put into the call. But that'll be starting next Wednesday on November 3rd, and has to run at least 5 days. We're not sure how long we'll be there. Maybe Whip Wilkerson knows a little bit more of how long, but the feeling is we'll be out before Thanksgiving.
Okay. And Representative Wilkerson made reference to the fact that this year the special session is being held sort of later. What's the reason that it was caused to be held later than it otherwise would have been?
Pandemic. The data got released a lot later than normally. So if you recall, the census was trying to be conducted when people were indoors and we were trying to socially distance. So everything got pushed back. They wanted to run some more quality checks once the new president came in. And so we received the data a lot later than what we normally would. And that's why we're having the special session a little bit later. However, I will say the data did come out in August. So we probably could have, like many other states, had this session a little earlier. This is a truly political process. So the fact that we're having it in November means that anybody that wanted to say they combine you with somebody else, combine you with another representative, it's too late for you to move because the Georgia Constitution requires that you actually live in the district 1 year before running. So this goes back to those that are in power can control the process unless the public speaks out. And so we are having the session in November, which we probably could even have had at, beginning of September like other states. So.
And what is the relationship between the census data that you're referring to and the work that you're trying to do in the special session in November? What is the connection between those two things?
So each district, as Senator Rhett said, each district gets a certain number of people. So you take Georgia's population, divided by 180 representatives, you get a number. Divided by 56, you get a number for a state senate. and Congress 14. And so each district needs to match that number or be close to it. And of course, you can have some differences if you want to, keep counties together or keep areas together. You can have differences on the state, Senate, and House. However, what this does is, like I said, the numbers from the census drive that. And so we'll look at the numbers, and the Democrats will propose a map, the Republicans will propose a map, and then the public, is free to make any recommended changes based on how the district looks and how your representatives are. But that's kind of what drives the process.
And Representative Allen, have there been committee meetings being held down at the legislature in advance of the special session and to help lay the groundwork for the work of the legislature?
There have been committee meetings, and I can let Doc talk to that. I think he's on the committee in the Senate. But there have been joint House and Senate committee meetings, not only at the Capitol, but also across the state and virtually. So those have been going on, as Will Wilkerson said, since August, when the data first came out. They've started having some of those hearings. So yes, they are in meeting.
And when, I guess, State Senator Rhett, can you speak to the committee work in the Senate anyway? Like, what have you been doing so far that helps lay the groundwork for the special session?
Basically traveling to different parts of the state, getting people input into what they want to see in terms of the map that represents their area. And then we've also been meeting within our own caucuses to try and, as David, I think, or Eric said, come up with a proposed map pertaining to redistricting. And then next week, the Democrats, we presented our map, at least the Senate has, and the Republicans will present theirs, and then we'll caucus over that and try and make it come up to some sort of a consensus, hopefully that's equitable across the board and reflects the true meaning of redistricting.
Okay. Would rapid movement of population be a reason for redistricting and or reapportionment?
When you say rapid growth,
Rapid movement of population. That's what the questioner said.
Within a 10-year period, or no? I mean, just rapid growth within that 10-year period would not normally be a reason for doing it, because those are just estimates. And so redistricting really should be based on it has to be based on the actual census count. So, no, rapid growth and development in a certain part of county or an area would not justify redistricting. Technically.
When you mentioned that the data comes down from the U.S. Census the Department team, how do you all equally get access as members of the State House and State Senate? Does it only come to certain people who have certain positions or certain committees?
No, it's public data. So anyone can pull that data that chooses to.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not limited just to the legislature. Anybody who's got internet access could do this.
Yes.
There are programs out on the internet. I think Days Redistricting is
Days
one.
Redistricting, yeah.
Yeah, can pull it up. But anybody to get access to the Legislative Council, the official maps, that would have to come to your legislator, and that's what we could go down there and draw maps all day if we wanted to. But yeah, so it is public data though.
And okay, so you mentioned about this drawing of the maps. Okay, so I mean, I guess in the old days, I suppose you'd have big maps spread out across a table with red pens and green pens and blue pens. How does this work today? How is this process done if you kind of get down there on a granular level?
Well, it's pretty much a fine art. They have a computer program where they look at various factors that would compose a district and make adjustments. And then theoretically, with the input of the different representatives or state senators as to what they'd like to look at, and based on population and other information, they can kind of draw a map to right on the computer right in front of you and make the adjustments.
So it's a computer process.
It's a computer process. And to one of the things that Doc just said, the reason why it's so important to get representatives and senators input is we know the communities of interest more so than someone using a computer at the Capitol. It's very important that we try to keep those centers of similarity together as much as possible, or else you'll dilute the voice of a certain area if you fragment it too much between representatives. So it's important to get that feedback so that we can do our best to keep communities of interest together.
I know one of the critics or criticisms about the redistricting process is that you have elected officials getting to pick their own districts in essence. Is that a fair criticism or an unfair criticism, and why?
You mean versus like having an independent committee do it?
Right.
An independent committee picked by the elected officials.
Officials, yeah.
I mean, if you think about it that way, I mean, the biggest challenge is that you do have whatever party's in control, they draw the maps behind closed doors. And so we're less than a week out and there's been no maps visibly given. I mean, you could probably go home tonight and pull up Days Redistricting and draw 180 lines that you thought might be halfway decent and actually have a discussion, but there's been no map drawing in public that I've seen. And so I think that's the process. I mean, you know, the public is going to get to see the maps probably the same time we do, which will be next week possibly, or they could roll out on a Friday and possibly get feedback, but it is not elected officials drawing maps. It's the party in control. And unless they want to open that door and make it accessible to everybody, there's only a handful of people that have drawn those maps. So, you know, but even if you look at independent redistricting commissions, I think Colorado has one, and the person that was in charge of the committee, they didn't realize until after he was put in charge that he was a QAnon person. And so they quickly realized that may not be the best possible outcome, having someone who says the election was stolen, drawing maps. So it is a inherently political process. So to try to take politics out of it is extremely difficult.
Okay, so I guess you would say that, President Wilkerson, that the process we have now, using the legislature to draw its own boundaries, is a preferable one to having an independent commission?
Is what?
It's preferable to an independent commission to do that process?
Well, I don't know if either one's right. I mean, probably what you want to do is have a committee that's equally divided between the different parts that truly represent. So it'd be kind of a hybrid, because to Representative Allen's point, I mean, I think people realize once they get in the weeds that it's a lot more difficult than what it seems, than just saying, fill out an application and draw lines, because you really may not know the difference between an Austell or a Mableton, or even one part of Mableton versus the other part of Mableton. But once you represent that area, you probably have a little bit better idea, just like the Mableton Improvement Coalition has a better idea of what happens in Mableton. So to take either citizens that are not fully engaged in the process just makes it extremely difficult. But at the same time, the process we're having right now is probably not ideal either, because to that point is you have the speaker, lieutenant governor, and their handpicked people drawing the maps at this point.
I understand that there were a series of public meetings and town halls held around the state, and that concerned the specific topic of redistricting. Did the legislature see a lot of turnout at these town halls and public meetings? And what were the prevailing opinions or sentiments that we were hearing expressed by the voters, no matter where in the state they live?
I think a common theme was not only just transparency, but not having the areas represented by multiple people instead of just one person. You know, you had some areas, especially particularly when you get down to some of the rural areas, you have multiple maybe representatives representing an area, so that place doesn't have one voice representing them in the state legislature. So that was a couple of things that were a common theme going across the state. And then were good turnouts.
I would agree with that. You take Athens, for example. I mean, what people were concerned about is they said they want fairness, they want transparency. And I'll give you Athens as an example, that an area that's pretty much been carved up just for political purposes. I mean, there's no reason to have, 3 state representatives in the city of Athens. It's not that big. And so people want to make sure they keep their community together, whether it's Athens, or even if you go up to the north west corner, they want to make sure that people are together, that you have a representative that actually you can put in or you can take out, that you get to select who your representative is and not one that's being drawn based on political or racial demographics.
Or even Smyrna, if you went closer. I mean, Smyrna has 4 different state representatives representing portions of Smyrna, as small as it is. So
Even closer, go to Mableton. I mean, look at Mableton's cutout.
Yeah,
I mean,
all of us on here, including Erica, have pieces of Mableton. And so it doesn't have a unified voice. That's a good point, David.
Yeah.
It's got a fragmented voice. And so that's what we mean by keeping those communities of interest together.
And when you're doing redistricting, are you required to have each of the districts to be roughly the same size in population? Or can you have like one district with like 90,000 people and one with 140,000 people right next door to it?
They need to be the same. As I mentioned before, congressional has no leeway. They pretty much have to be one way or the other. The state House and Senate, the courts have historically ruled that you can go up and down 5%, but it really depends on, you have to have a justification for that. You can't have 5% overpopulated in Democratic areas and 5% under Republican areas. That would not be a justification. But if you're trying to keep a county together or a city together, you can go over and below. But I think what you're going to see is probably a shift of about 2% either way. If history stands, if we say according to what we've done in the past, you'll see some differences, but you pretty much should have equal population between all the districts.
And when you get through doing redistricting through the state House, state Senate, and the congressional maps, when do they become legally binding and in effect?
Once the governor signs it. I mean, that's when they become effective.
So what if the governor doesn't sign it and said, I don't like your maps, try again?
I've never seen that happen before, but the governor's going to sign the maps. I wouldn't even worry about that.
His part is drawing them. He's going to sign them.
Yeah, he's going to sign them. The only way that would happen is if you had 2 different parties, or, I mean, you got a governor heading to election year, there's no way he's going to not sign those maps.
And so the second he signs on the dotted line, that they become legally binding.
Yep, that is correct.
Now, I'm saying too that when it comes to the maps, obviously, I'm sure that the legislators have to take into consideration several different criteria, and want to ask you kind of which ones of these are ones that have to be adhered to. Does it matter if the criteria that you're drawing your maps for is strictly partisan, Democrat, Republican? Is that a legally protected basis for legislators to draw maps?
Yes. You can stick it to the other party all you want. The Constitution, you just can't do it based on racial lines, but there's been the courts have stayed out of, it's a state issue when it comes to partisanship. So basically you can do whatever you want to the other party, as long as you stay within those guidelines of one person, one vote. So as long as you keep the districts the same and they are connected, meaning you can't island hop, when you do, when you look at the cities, you can't have islands in between. You have to connect at some point. As long as you're connecting, you can do whatever you want when it comes to partisanship.
Okay.
That's what makes it so dangerous, is that it's not about the voters. It's not about you. It's not about your community. Sometimes it's about the sheer partisanship of what those districts look like and if they can stay in power.
What about, you mentioned earlier, about the role of race or non-role of race in drawing lines. What sort of behaviors are approved of or prohibited on those bases? For example, can the legislature say, I'll have, of the 14, I'll give you 12 that are mostly Caucasian and 2 almost entirely African-American districts, and we'll say that's legal? Are those, how's that look?
Only if you want to go to court and lose, you'll do that. But no, you can't set guidelines like that. And the courts have kicked it back when people have gotten caught saying that they either set a specific number or either population-wise or district-wise. But the courts have changed significantly over the last few years. They've gotten a lot more conservative. 10 years ago, we were still under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. which required pre-clearance. So if you go back years ago, back to the 2000 census, the reason we have Chairwoman Cupid is primarily because that Commission District 4 that she came out of was one that went through the courts and we won. I was a litigant in that. I was one of the plaintiffs in that case. And what the legislative body was trying to do is basically take a district from Six Flags up to Ackworth. And just follow 75 because they were trying to dilute African-American voting strength. The courts came back and said they can't do that. The legislative body did it again. Courts came back again and said, don't do that. And then the chairman at the time decided to back off and sign a consent order. But with that, history moves on. The area continues to grow the way it is. And then you now have, a body that reflects the community that elected them. So, but Section 5 is going now. And so would that case happen now? Who knows? Because like I said, the courts have changed significantly since then, and those protections are now gone.
Two terms, I'm sorry, two terms you'll hear people use during the process, like Representative Wilkerson just talked about, is cracking and packing. And what he's talking about is where you try to fracture the voice or dilute it and crack it, if you will, to where a district going from Six Flags to Ackworth would obviously dilute a lot of minority voice in a certain area. And the other egregious alternative that is packing all of those similar voices into one district so that the rest of the county in this case would be able to control a majority because you packed all of the like-minded people into one district. So those are two terms that you'll hear a lot. Well, maybe not a lot because it depends on how much you follow the process, but that's what will usually get maps in trouble under Section 5. But now with the Voting Rights Act, we don't know what it's going to look like in the courts when it's challenged this time.
And when was Section 5 changed by the courts? What year?
2013, I believe.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
So it's been since the last redistricting that was handed down, that decision.
Yes.
So the legislators who are drawing the 2020 maps are having under a different set of legal principles than the ones who did the 2010 maps.
Yes.
What about, are there requirements with regard to gender? In other words, if can you draw maps that might pack overly large numbers, perhaps of one gender or another, if you could find it that way using your computer programs? Is that permissible or impermissible as according to laws and decisions of the courts?
Not to no, I would not consider any gender a protected group under current law.
I don't even think that's ever been, I don't know if it's been tested, but yeah.
No.
Some people have asked, what are the options if a group of legislators or a party doesn't like the outcome of the maps? Can they then realistically, under the current legal climate, realistically go to court and succeed in overturning the maps and have them redrawn?
Well, you can go to court, but just like David or Eric was alluding to earlier, back in 2012, Eric Holt, at that time, the U.S. Attorney General, he let the maps that the Republicans proposed go through, hoping that a court case might overturn it. But what we got instead in 2013 was we lost pre-clearance, Section 5, like David said. So, but also what David said, with the court a little more conservative now, you can try and go to court, but they've made the burden of proof a little higher than in the past.
The realistic remedy is to elect more people in your party.
True.
And be the ones drawing the map in 2030. I mean, that's the real remedy.
What actions can we as voters take to ensure it's a fair and representative outcome for redistricting?
I would say what you're doing now. I mean, it's not a exciting topic, but the challenge is that most people pay attention when they go to vote and realize that their lines are crazy or that their representative lives in a completely different community that doesn't understand what's going on. So I would say when the maps come out next week, call your legislators, call the committee and give feedback. There will be a committee hearing at some point for both the Senate and the House maps. as well as the congressional maps. And I would say give feedback at that point on what that does to your community. If you see a number of representatives and you think that's good, then give that feedback. If you think it's bad, give that feedback. But I would say follow the process the next couple of weeks, because that is going to impact who you get to vote on. And then after that, so call the committee chair and say, look, I think these maps reflect whatever they do, if they're good or bad, and then let them know that feedback.
So is it your belief if members of a community were to load up into SUVs and drive down to the Capitol and appear and try to speak out at these committee hearings, would that make a difference in the outcome?
It has impact on some lines, I would say, because the first map we get is probably going to, it could be a draft of some sort. You'll see some minor changes, but remember, even if someone's drawing the map, there are other people that have to run for re-election. So we have to explain the vote that we take when those maps come out, whether we're for them or against them. We have to be able to explain to the community we represent if those maps adequately reflect it, and that's why we have to make that decision. And we go back a few years ago, there were maps that were stopped in the middle of the process because of the community feedback. So I would say definitely keep an eye on what's happening, look now, give feedback, and then make your decision after that.
Okay. This person asked, how will this change the elections next year with representation, and how do voters learn if they are in a different district than they are now located? Representative Allen, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't change the way you vote as far as polling precincts or any of that. That's more driven at the local level. It may impact who you're voting for, who's on your ballot. And you'll find that out either through the media, through town halls, or quite honestly, through the new person representing you, reaching out because they're going to want your vote. Everybody who's running for re-election is probably going to have some new voters that they're going to be trying to reach out to. So there'll be various ways that you'll know that your representation is shifted.
This person asked, is there a law that dictates how the area should be drawn, i.e. a district broken up into multiple pieces, etc.?
As long as it's not gerrymandered or blatant gerrymandering, but for the most part, I haven't seen anything that says they have to be drawn up in a particular geographical manner.
They just have to connect. You can't have broken, you can't jump streets. Like you can't start a district, stop. They have to be contiguous. So that's the only thing. Our Constitution doesn't really have a lot of guidance in it. So it's left up to the legislative body. So what happens.
Mm-hmm. All right. So obviously I think that the state senator used the G word, gerrymandering. For some people for some people who may not know what that word means, can you explain what that term means?
Oh, well, basically, just like David described, when you draw a district that pretty much leaves out a certain demographic from.
Okay. I think at this point, Representative Erica Thomas has joined us. Join our panel, so we're thrilled to have her with us.
Thank you so much, Joel. I appreciate you having me on. I'd like to add to that question about gerrymandering, and basically what it is it's pretty much manipulating the boundaries and in favor of one party or class. And so in this instance, what we're dealing with is allowing the majority party, I'd just say majority party. The majority party is the one that is going to be able to manipulate those boundaries. And, we're going to try to fight hard, but it's going to be a very hard battle. And we all know what's probably going to happen in the end when it comes to who's going to rule these maps.
Representative Thomas, can you share with everyone what your post number is and what communities are included in your district that you represent in the State House?
Thank you. So right now I represent District 39. The reason why I say right now I represent District 39, and I have Austell, Mableton, a small bit of unincorporated Powder Springs, and a bit of Smyrna. And so that's what it looks like right now. And we will see what it looks like November 24th.
And picking up on this gerrymandering theme, and thank you for that, Representative Thomas. What could be done by the voters to combat gerrymandering and prevent it from happening?
I think the biggest thing is in this type of battle that we're going into next week, the voters and the citizens have the most power. You know, we need their voices just as much as they need ours, because as far as my party that I represent, we're not in power, and so it's left up to the people that are actually able to draw the maps and have the majority of the votes. And so we have to put the pressure on your elected officials, because what you will see is you will see some elected officials that will bend to the other side and will get some things in the map that they might want or get some things that they might like, and they will vote for these gerrymandered maps. And they may come back to you and say, oh, this was good for the district. This was good for me. This was good for that. But no, if it's not good for the all of Georgia, it's not good at all, because 1 inch or one carve out of any part affects the full map. I mean, you carve out one, part or add something or take it away, it affects all of Cobb County. And I know that Representative Wilkerson can attest to that because he's been through this before. And so we have to make sure that all of us, Representative Wilkerson, Dr. Rhett, Representative Allen, we all stick together, on this. We cannot bend to the other side and just for our own needs. And so put the pressure on your senator, put the pressure on your representatives to make sure that they don't bend. And because what will happen in a court case is that they will say, or any case, let's not say what court case, I don't want to say nothing about no court, but what will happen is they will say that this was bipartisan, that everybody wanted it, just with one vote.
Representative Wilkerson, I guess it was mentioned that you have been through this process before. How does the process feel to you now as compared to when you went through it the last time, just on an anecdotal basis?
I mean, it's a little slower just because the data came out later. Plus, 10 years ago, the majority party was on the way up. And so they were able to draw districts and kind of even stretch to gerrymander some districts in, which results in the maps we have now. Now the state's more 50-50. And so they're struggling on their side. So that may be the reason for the delay is because realistically, Georgia's a 50-50 state. It's not, going 2/3 one way or the other. And so they need to draw a map. They should draw a map that reflects that changing demographics of the state, both politically and racially. And so that's what we're waiting on. It's just more of a waiting game this time than it was last time.
And you mentioned earlier about the data that came in from the Census Bureau. Leaving aside the redistricting process, what has the data revealed thus far about how we as a state look different now than we did 10 years ago? Are we more rural? Are we more northern? Are we more, are we larger cities? Do we have, are we more women? I mean, how do we look compared to
Just
10 years ago? Looking
at it from the Senate maps, people are leaving the rural areas and moving to the metro area. When you go to South Georgia, they're going to lose a seat because of population. And when you look at some of the senators in South Georgia, they're short. Well, you're supposed to have this year 191 people to form a Senate district. Some people are 34,000 short. Some people are 24,000 short. Then when you go up to further north Georgia, you find the same thing. You see a lot of people moving towards the metro area when you look at our maps. But in the metro area, most of the area is blue. But when you get north or south, then that's when you run into the more red.
Yeah.
How about the state house maps? How are they looking different?
It's the same way. I mean, the population shifts together. So you're seeing a more shifting to the metro area. And that's partly because if you go to a lot of places across the state, you don't have the same access to healthcare that you do in the metro area. So if you're starting a family, you've got to look at all those quality of life issues. And because of the decisions that we've made as a state, despite bipartisan efforts to try to expand broadband, et cetera, not having Medicaid expansion, those type issues really impacts the rural communities because the hospitals are closing. And if you don't have hospitals, you don't have jobs. If you don't have jobs, you lose population. So it all kind of comes back together that you're seeing a migration to more the metro area for those quality of life issues. And so with that also comes the voting population that goes with it. So it's all about the metro picking up seats, and then the rural districts getting bigger in land mass because they lost population.
As a practical matter, so just taking what you said about the rural population changing. So if I'm a legislator and I'm in a county or area that's down by the Florida border, for example, how is my district going to change in order for me to have the same number of people as I had 10 years ago if the population has moved further north? How does that get accomplished?
Yeah. Instead of having 8 counties you got to run in, you might have 12 counties you've got to reach out to voters, because it is all about the number of people, not the square area. So yeah, those districts are pretty large down in the area. So you could have a portion of a county for a legislative seat in the metro area, but then you would have to have 14 counties in South Georgia. So it just expands the number of people that they've got to reach out to as far as distance wise. Not actual number of people, but just distance.
Well, so in those cases, a state house district might look like a state senate district.
It might look like a congressional district, to be honest with you. I mean, realistically, some of those are bigger in land mass than congressional districts in the metro area.
Okay. What is your plan on an individual basis? So this is obviously for each of you to answer, to educate the community about the proposed redistricting maps and its impact on their lives. How are each one of you going to do that between now and the end of the session so that voters can understand how this is working and what it means to them?
Well, I'd like to chime in on that. One thing that we're doing, and me and David Wilkerson, Representative David Wilkerson, actually Whip David Wilkerson, are a part of the leadership in the House. So what we are doing is we're putting together some virtual, some infographics, also some things that kind of break it down in layman's terms. I was just talking with Theron Johnson today with the National Redistricting Committee with Eric that works for Eric Holder, talking about how we can put things together just like the Now This videos or videos that people share a lot and that break it down in layman's terms, where maybe we put together 3 people, you have 3 little bodies, and then you take 2 away and then you add another one so people can understand it in layman's terms. So we're trying to find ways to put it out digitally, because this is a very this is hard to decipher. This is not something that is just everyday, something like taxes or something like voting that everyone understands. A lot of the legislators are kind of coming into understanding how this actually works. And so it's really great that we have someone in leadership like David Wilkerson that is really helping us to break this down, because he's been through this before and knows the timelines and how this usually works. And so we're trying to digitally put it out there for people, because we know that the number one source of disseminating information is on social media, is online. And so we're trying to get it to the people as much as we can using entities like Facebook, Nextdoor, and newsletters as well. So we're going to try our best as far as in the House to get that out to the people as much. And there's 3 different things that we're working on. We've got to break it down to the people, the congressional maps. We have to break it down, the House maps and the Senate maps. And they're all, totally different things, and so that's how we're going to try to do that as much as we can. And we appreciate groups like Mableton Improvement Coalition for having us on a call to help to break it down to the people, to get the questions answered that normally we wouldn't talk about at a grocery store or at Walmart.
Thank you very much for that. Representative Allen and State Senator Rhett, what is your answer to that question? How are you individually trying to push this word out to the people?
I think from a macro standpoint, what Representative Thomas just talked about is accurate. That's the best way on a large scale. On a small scale, the constituents in my district, I've pretty much let them know that and we know it's going to move fast, but it is my intent to do some type of virtual town hall or meeting for my district in particular. Just let them know what the proposed changes are to our community and what that impact is going to be. So for me, there's a two-pronged approach, of the macro approach of what does this mean for everyone, but also the constituents itself to figure out, well, what does this mean for you and your community?
State Senator Rhett.
Well, this is my first redistricting, and it says a lot that my colleagues asked me to be on the Senate Redistricting Committee, and I've been learning quite a bit. I've not only been doing things that similar to what Representative Erica Thomas has said, but I've also been visiting people in person, places like Rotary, American Legion, Austell Task Force, Powder Springs Task Force, visiting churches and conducting sessions with people to help them understand the process and how it works, and moving forward, not only how it has an impact right now, but it has an impact 10 years down the road, and why we have to be cognizant of what's going on. Because, I've worked traveling around the state with the redistricting committee. I ran into some people who said, we've been voting in numbers, and we hadn't been able to bring about change. Well, I had to explain to them part of that is because of the redistricting and the way your district is made up. And it's important that they know what that process is so that they're not frustrated, but let them know, just like Representative Erick Allen has said earlier, we do have to go out and get out there and continue to vote and make a difference in order to bring about change.
So speaking to your particular state Senate panel that you're on, Senator Rhett, is it made up equally of Democrats and Republicans? And how well do they work together on that panel?
Committee is.
In the Senate, we have 15 people and 5 of us are Democrats. And the House I think the numbers are similar.
Okay. That's 10 and 5?
Yes.
Okay.
But you can't let that deter
It's not like that on the House floor. I think because we have more members, I think the proportion may be about that, but we have, I think, about how many members do we have, Representative Wilkerson? I think we have about 8 or 9 members on the redistricting. We have more members on the redistricting, but that's not because we have more power, but it's because we have more members.
That is correct. Yeah.
And can you speak to the public about how well the two different sides work together on their committee? Is there genuine bipartisanship, genuine working together, or are you like 2 separate functioning committees?
Well, let me say this, Joel. The crazy that, of course it's not. They already have their maps. Everything's already done. Let's be real. You know what I mean? They're going to try to push it over to us like, oh, we're listening to the people. But, they pretty much have their mind made up. And I just hope that, we stick together as Democrats, because I hate to say this, but you're probably going to see some people fall off. And so it's not even about, working together just with the other party, but there's going to be some people that are going to try to save their district. There are some people that lost a lot of people in their district. A lot of people moved out, and moved to Metro Atlanta, or, vice versa. Or there's not even that, where some people just want a certain subdivision in their district, or they want a certain school in their district. And you're going to see the Republicans fighting the Republicans because they have to get rid of some of their own people. And you're going to see the Democrats fighting the Democrats. So I just hope that not just about the committee structure, but I hope that, the Senate and the House can work together. I hope that we can have, the senators, like Doc Rhett, come to us and tell us what's going on, and us vice versa. I think that's really, really important for us to be communicating with each other as Democrats, and not going to Republicans and talking to them, trying to do what we can do willy-nilly. I think it's all about sticking together, whether what party you are and what you want to get done, because this is a little bit different than SB 202. We were all on one side. It's like we're fighting. Well, most of us were. We were all on one side. We're fighting for voting rights, and so that people can vote. But this is individual. This is like, the Hunger Games, so we shall see how it really turns out. And I think that we need to have another one of these town halls in the midst of redistrict. And I think you already have one planned, but it's going to be different from what we're talking about right now, to be very honest with you. And I think that Wilkerson can attest to that, because he's been through this before, that the song that people are singing today is going to be a different song. It's all unity and love. And then November 18th, it's going to be, I don't talk to him no more. You know what I'm saying? I don't know who that is. So we just hope that we can stick together. And I think we have a great crew in Cobb County that is very cohesive and honest with each other. And I think that you'll see that coming out, that we are able to work together to get things done, whether it is something that somebody wants in their district or needs in their district. I think that we can work together to get that done.
Okay.
Joel, can I say something else that I want to, because we're talking about the committee as if the committee is actually sitting in a room drawing the maps together. And I want people listening to know that that's not what the committee is doing. It's more of conversation in the committee about the maps. I'm sure Doc is not in the room while they're sitting there drawing them. The maps are basically drawn in the House by probably the speaker and probably one or two senators getting in the room drawing them. So when you talk about the committee is not, I just don't want people to think the committee is sitting in a room, Democrats, Republicans, all sitting there drawing these maps together. I found that that's not the case. The maps will be delivered and the committees will debate them and talk about them. People will have public comment, but the committee is not drawing maps.
Just to add one thing to what Representative Eric Thomas was saying, there's some people gonna have to make some real choices, some tough choices, because there's some districts, Democratic districts in rural Georgia, where they're short 34,000 or 30,000, and they're gonna fight to try and not be drawn into each other, but remain separate entities. And they're gonna be doing some tough negotiations. And so there's gonna be some tough and real practical choices, because if we lose that and they're drawn into each other, then we lose a seat. But if they can negotiate to remain separate, but have to pick up maybe go from 8 to 12 counties and make that negotiation, they're gonna have a tough choice in terms of moving forward or how they vote. So just, I'm just trying to give you a little graphic example of the tough choices some people are gonna have.
Okay.
It's not gonna be easy.
Okay. Which members of the Cobb delegation, other than Senator Rhett, are serving on a legislative committee that deals specifically with reapportionment or redistricting?
Just Senator Rhett, but as Representative Thomas, she serves as vice chair of our caucus, so we'll be intimately involved with the maps from a leadership standpoint. My position is whip, and her position is vice chair of the Democratic caucus. So we'll look at it from a global level, statewide. And then when you talk about local maps, Representative Allen's the chair of the delegation. So he'll drive that process for your school board and county commission maps with the delegation. So you have on the call right now 4 people that are pretty involved in the redistricting process in one way or the other.
Now, we talked earlier about how did Georgia as a whole change because of thanks to the numbers we learned from the data from the Census Bureau. Let's focus on Cobb specifically. How did Cobb change as compared to the last census? Are we more focused on the legacy cities now? Are we more spread out on the margins? Are we all packed in the Southeast? Are we more African-American? Are we more female? How are we different now as a county as compared to what we were 10 years ago?
I want to say something before one of the more, I guess we'll let one of the men answer that latter part of the question, but I want to intro into this. One thing that I would say is that not as many people as we believed completed the census. I know in my district, it was low numbers. And so before we even answer that question, it's about accuracy. I was looking at some numbers that were saying that more people that were registered to vote than took the census. So it's like, is it really telling us the real numbers of how many people and the growth? So we do have some numbers. and I would like for them to elaborate on that. But to be honest with you, I can speak for my district is that we didn't have as the people that live here. It's like, for example, you got 15 people in your house that are registered to vote, but only 2 people live here. You know what I mean? So, it's trying to gauge the numbers correctly. It's a little bit skewed. But I'll let someone else elaborate on that question.
Okay, so I guess.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, so I would say that. So if you would, could you answer the question we had about, how does Cobb look different now? Not just sheer numbers of population, but just how we distributed amongst ourselves and changed.
I think from a racial demographic makeup, we're a lot like the rest of the state. We're a lot less white, in population, a lot more diverse. I think there was just as much growth. Cobb grew, I would say, in both the cities, the legacy cities, but also there was significant growth in a lot of census tracts that are in unincorporated Cobb. For example, the Cumberland area, my district in proportion has 7,000 voters too many, 7,000 people too many. And most of that growth was in unincorporated areas of Cobb. So the cities did see some growth. We also saw some growth in some of the unincorporated areas as well. And just a point of clarification, your question earlier, you asked if any other Cobb members were on reapportionment. I think the perspective we came from were Democratic members. Ed Setzler and Matt Dollar are also both on reapportionment. So when you talk about the county as a whole, we do have those 2 members in the House that are on reapportionment. Okay,
well, thank you for that clarification. Right. I hope I didn't ask the question just with one party or another. I hope I didn't ask it that way.
No, but we're in a different mindset right now. So
yeah, it was like we answered it. It wasn't you, Joel, at all.
It wasn't you. It wasn't you.
I just want. For this, if there's any questions that anyone has for me individually, my email is erica.thomas@house.ga.gov. And thank you again, Joel, and the rest of the MIC team for putting this on. We really, really appreciate you getting the message out.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for participating. Appreciate it very much. Representative Wilkerson, you want to add to the answer from Representative Allen about how Cobb looks different and is different now as compared to 10 years ago for the purposes of census data?
Yeah, we grew slightly faster than the state as a whole. I think we're probably around 11% as far as our growth. So what that means is our districts don't have to grow as much, or they'll probably actually shrink in size, some of them. So we're slightly above. So if the state grew by 9% and we grew at 11, then that means that we grew a little bit faster. So that means we have a little bit more power proportionally to the state. A lot of your growth, as you could probably tell, just with your involvement in the community and zoning, has been in the western side of the town. Powder Springs, I think, grew by 20%. Your southern part of the county grew. Smyrna grew. So the areas you would expect to see growth, their districts will probably shrink in size. And then the other areas will have to grow slightly, say in East Cobb, that did not grow as much.
So like, since you're speaking to the Mableton Improvement Coalition, how did Mableton change as compared to 10 years ago from the data you've seen?
I want to say the Mableton precincts have also grown slightly faster, but is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, but not nearly as fast as West Cobb and more of the Smyrna Cumberland side of South Cobb.
Okay.
So a lot of the growth is, if you think about our commission districts, it's really been in Commission District 4.
Yes.
And the western side of Commission District 2 is where you've seen most of the growth in the county.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Now, with respect to there's been some discussion here about the school board maps and the county commission maps, and that's going to be handled in 2022. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And who is tasked with drawing those lines? Is that does the school board draw its own lines? Does the county commission draw its own lines and then say, hey, here, legislature, you pass this?
It is the responsibility of the legislative body to pass those maps. I know historically, Earl Earhart, for example, had a pretty good role and pretty large role, I should say, in drawing the maps. But we will definitely, I'm sure, reach out to the school board and county commission to get their input. Unfortunately, the school board couldn't agree on the color of the sky, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to come with a unified voice. But the county commission definitely, we want input from everybody. But at the end of the day, it's the legislative body's job to draw those maps.
And how do you handle those responsibilities with respect to the county commission and the school board? Obviously, you get their input, but from past experience and just tradition and habit, does the legislature try to follow the wishes of those bodies, or do they say, we'll draw, or do you say, hey, we're going to draw the way we think they look better? If that works for you, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too.
I would default to what Wilkerson said earlier. The party in control has the responsibility of drawing those maps, and in Cobb County, that's going to fall on us. Not that it's going to be slanted one way or the other, but the input we will seek, but the responsibility of presenting maps for a vote will be on the delegation.
Okay. And is the delegation in Cobb County, is it more Republicans or more Democrats?
It is a Democratic majority on the Cobb legislative.
Yeah, the beauty of it for the voter, I mean, to be honest, is that there is a one vote margin in the House and the Senate's tied. So whatever maps you see coming out of Cobb County should truly reflect not only the communities and the voters' interest and the community's interest, but also that of the political makeup. I mean, because you're not going to be able to force a map out of the Senate that's partisanly driven because it's a tied delegation. So I would expect that the maps will be something that everybody can live with, or at least the majority of the voters can live with.
And for the most part, Cobb has behaved itself fairly well when it comes to maps and other issues, and we expect that to continue.
Does the legislature as a whole give deference to Cobb County about how it wants to draw its internal political boundaries?
Historically or down?
Historically.
Historically, yes. You left it up to the local delegation. However, we have seen a movement, and especially Gwinnett County, where local legislation has been determined by the whole body. So we saw that in DeKalb several years ago. So tradition says that, yes, it will be left up to the local delegation, but there's nothing in the Constitution that stops the Republicans from disregarding the local delegations and trying to take it as a whole. But that is a whole new area that would be a complete abuse of power in my determination. But there's nothing to stop them if that's what they so desire, except feedback from the voters.
Right.
Okay.
The one thing they can't do, because it is still local legislation, unless they do something really egregious with the rules, is they can't produce their own maps. So even in that scenario, they could move it for a general body, general vote, and vote maps down. But I'm not sure of a process in which they could, without the delegation, draw a map that they want for counties.
They could sub it on the floor, probably.
Yeah. What is each of your personal beliefs about districts which straddle more than one county? Do you think those are well advised or ill advised as a public policy matter?
I think I'm the only one on here that has that situation where I sit on 3 different delegations. I'm the chair of the Cobb delegation, but also sit on the Fulton County delegation and the City of Atlanta delegation. And I can tell you, it is not advisable to have that scenario. I spend probably, even though about 15% of my district is in Fulton County, I probably spend 50% of my time on those issues. And it's just not a good split. The reason that was done was so that Republican held districts could carve into Fulton County in 1 or 2 precincts, and they would control the Fulton County delegation without having people who actually lived in Fulton County or City of Atlanta. I think that has backfired. I think all those districts have now, for the most part, and you have basically a City of Atlanta delegation with, I believe, one Republican on it. So I would assume that would be revisited in these current maps, and districts like mine, where, like I said earlier, I'm going to have to lose 7,000 voters in this district, I would imagine that it'll be 2,500 of them from the Fulton County side.
If I'm a voter in the city of Atlanta or in Fulton or in Cobb, in your specific instance, why is a split district bad for me?
It really, in my opinion, it goes back to the one vote, one person, one vote. I should not be voting on things that matter, that truly have consequence in the city of Atlanta delegation, considering I have less than 5% of the population of the city of Atlanta. It's just not I cannot relate to some of the things that they may be dealing with on a different level, the same way you wouldn't want someone, like David said earlier, in Ackworth determining what's going on in, Austell or Powder Springs or in Mableton. So just the more those get spread out and diluted, I think it just takes away the effectiveness of the representation.
How is it that, how do you encourage that the special session and redistricting process in 2021 will be a more democratic one? And when I say that, I mean Democrat with a little d, because the way it's been described tonight, in many ways, people might argue that redistricting is very anti-democratic. And again, with a little d. So how would each of you advise people who are watching this presentation to make this more democratic, to help ensure it becomes more democratic than perhaps it otherwise would?
Stay in touch, stay involved.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is call down to the Capitol and ask for the maps to be released, as soon as possible to give you time to review it. So if they've had, months to look at it, the public should get more than a day to look at it. So first thing I would say is reach out to your local representatives and those that on the committee and ask for the maps to be released, and give at least 5 days for someone to look at them and get some feedback from their community, because it puts us at a disadvantage that we get a map one day and then have to vote on it the next. So that would be the first step is release the maps now, let them out. You got them, release them, is the first thing that I would say.
The last piece of that is watch how your representatives behave and vote, and truly hold people accountable at the ballot box. When it comes for anybody involved in the process, whether it be a senator, a representative, the speaker, well, you can't vote for the speaker, but the governor, anyone else, because that's the ultimate accountability factor is at the ballot box.
All right. So for some people who might be watching this and they're like, I'm just really busy trying to raise my family. I'm trying to get a business off the ground. I'm trying to, keep things going in my community. I am so busy. I just don't have time for redistricting. Why should I even care about this? It just sounds like a bunch of chess pieces being moved around a board, and it's inside baseball stuff. So why should I care about it? So each one of you can answer that question, starting with you, State Senator. Why should I care if I'm in those positions?
It can have an impact for 1 or 2 generations. You look at the Georgia Legislature, I think around 2002, the Republicans started to take over, and then they still control both chambers and the governorship here almost 20 years later. So it has a generational impact. And if you're not careful, that same thing can happen again. And, we're saying right now we're in 2021, but I think Eric had mentioned 2031. That's 10 years.
Okay.
So it has a generational impact. Well, not only just one generation, in this case, 2 generations.
Okay. So thank you so much. Representative Wilkerson?
Yeah, I would say it's a wise investment in time, because if you wait until you get to the ballot box, your elected officials may already be decided for you based on what happens over the next 2 weeks. So if you really want a choice, 10 2 years from now, next year, 4 years from now, then you want to be involved now and give feedback on what that committee looks like. So they're setting the rules of the game today. You talk about moving chess pieces around, but they're taking away chess pieces, or maybe taking away your queen or your bishop or something. And so what you want to do is make sure you actually have the tools that you need to elect someone that is truly going to listen to your community. And when they listen to your community, that means jobs coming to your area, that means money coming to your area, that means so many other things that impact how you raise your children. That you don't have to move out of the district because you're concerned about schools. You don't have to move out of the district because you're concerned about the type of housing that comes in. That's all decided based on who you get to vote for. And if they already decide who you get to vote for and they pick you and you don't get to pick them, you have already lost out on that battle.
Okay. President Allen, you want to offer your comments?
I think the senator and Whip have said it best. An old mentor I used to have said they won't take your voice, they'll break your voice during reapportionment. I think that you have to really making sure communities of interest stay together. It's going to take those community of interest showing up, being vocal and pushing, because if you don't, then once you become fractured, that's when you see all the things coming around you that you don't want to see, because you don't have that consolidated voice. You've got that broken voice. So this really is not just about moving chess pieces around on the chessboard. It has real life impacted implications on what will shape your community for the next 10 years. And it is very important. I would encourage everyone to do not consider this and your involvement a waste of time, and do not feel hopeless. Do not feel like your voice can't make a difference. You have to speak up and be involved.
All right. Well, I certainly would love to keep going on here, but I'm afraid we've reached the end of our program. But
Yeah.
I cannot say enough our appreciation to State Senator Rhett and Representative Wilkerson, Representative Allen, and Representative Thomas, all of whom have joined us this evening to provide us some really valuable insight. I think this is information that most people in the public just don't know about. So thank you for sharing all this, and thank you for what you're doing each and every day for the voters of Cobb County to help move things forward and improve the quality of life for all of us, and giving us insight in this process, because it is very important, as you say. And we also want to remind people, as Nathan said earlier today, that there is an upcoming ballot initiative, and that is the East Loss. We encourage people to come out to make sure they vote for it. However you vote, just please make sure you cast your vote. And I think also, as Ray, our chair, had said, we're a volunteer group, the Mableton Improvement Coalition. Forums like this we like to put together for the benefit of the public, but we certainly would benefit from having more volunteers. I've yet to meet a group that suffers from having too many volunteers, and I don't think I think we're not at that problem either. So we always welcome more people from the community to get involved to help spread the word. But again, we're very lucky.
Hey, Joel, I hate to do this. Can I add one thing real quick that came to mind? We talked about gerrymandering earlier, and there is one legislative body in the county that is actually still partisanly divided and run by Republicans. That's the school board. And I'll give you a perfect example why this matters. 10 years ago, the school board came with a map, bipartisan map, and said, we think these are good districts. They were good districts. The legislative body decided to redraw those lines and move districts around, which resulted in the makeup of the board that we have now, which I would say contributed a lot to the problems that we have now, because they were so partisanly driven. So you look at the impact that the school board is having now on the potential SPLOST, and the fact that many of us are not supporting it goes back to what happened 10 years ago. So it's all kind of connected, that when you have partisan gerrymandering, that the only sole purpose is to maintain power over another group, you don't end up with something that reflects the district. So you basically have a county that votes one way, that the school board silences the majority of the county, which is now putting at risk $1 billion SPLOST. And so I would say, and I just want to add that back in, why redistricting matters. It matters even to this day of something that was done 10 years ago that was purely partisan. So I just want to add that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right. And as I said, obviously, we appreciate all of your input, and we thank you, the listeners, whether you've been watching through Zoom or you've been watching with Facebook streaming. We appreciate your being on here today, and obviously this will be something we're going to upload for people to watch again in the future. But thank you to each one of you out there in the audience for being part of this process of your civic engagement. You could be doing any number of things tonight that are out there to do, and yet you've chosen to be part of this program this evening and listen and learn and get some wisdom from our elected officials, and we appreciate all of you doing that. I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe evening, and by all means, go Braves.
Thanks. Go Braves.
Go Braves.
Go Braves.